And a very good afternoon once again to you. It is Wednesday the 13th of February. You're listening to iTalk FM. This is Radio Jones with me, Pippa Jones. Welcome aboard. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you're enjoying iTalk FM generally. Thanks to David Jelly, who precedes my programme. And of course, Stacey Pinkers Pinkerton will be up after me at 7 o'clock. I take you through until 7 o'clock. I would urge you to indeed contact me during the programme. We don't have a phone-in option. It's not a phone-in programme, but certainly your comments and your messages are most appreciated. You can contact me either via Skype on pippa.c.jones. You can find me on Facebook, that's Pippa Jones. You can email me, pippa@italkfm.com. Alternatively, you can text me, and of course, if you're outside of Spain, don't forget to add 0034 to the text number. It's 951 140 223. And the wonderful world of Twitter as well, of course. I am on Twitter, and that's at Pippa Jones iTalk, at Pippa Jones iTalk. Please do send in your comments, especially if you hear something that you don't agree with. It's much more interesting if there's a little bit of a conflict of discussion. Now, a very quick roundup of what I've got for you today. As usual, I do endeavour to bring you a lot of variety, and we're going to different corners of the globe today. So I'm going to be joined by Gail Dines, who's a professor of sociology and women's studies at Wheelock College, Boston in the United States, and she's an anti-porn campaigner. She's going to be telling us why she believes pornography is detrimental to our societies. I'm going to be joined by the wonderful and the immaculate John Rushton, who will share his perspective on the perversion of the Islamic religion by extremists. Back again to the United States of America with Bruce Fyfe, chairman of the Homeless Emergency Project in Florida, and they deal with the aftermath of US servicemen and women on their return from combat and the problem that these poor people actually do experience. And I'm delighted to welcome a member of the Rohingya community to the programme, who is going to be explaining to us about the tragic events taking place in Myanmar to the Rohingya Muslims in their community. Do stay tuned for that. It's a very, very sad story. Nonetheless, very worth airing. You're listening to Radio Jones. I'm going to get us kicked off with a piece of music while I get my first guest on the line. That is Bruce Fyfe. He's waiting for me in Florida. He's going to be telling us about the plight of US servicemen and women on their return from combat. Do stay tuned.
Drove downtown in the rain, 9:30 on a Tuesday night, just to check out the late night record shop. Call it impulsive, call it compulsive, call it insane. But when I'm surrounded, I just can't stop. It's a matter of instinct, it's a matter of conditioning, and a matter of fact. You can go where Pablo stop. Ring a bell and I'll salivate. How'd you like that? Dr. Landy, tell me I'm not just a pentagon. 'Cause right now I'm lying in bed, just like Brian Wilson did. Well, I'm lying in bed just like Brian Wilson did. Oh. So I'm lying here, just staring at the ceiling tiles, and I'm thinking about, oh, what's I think about? Just listening and re-listening, just finally smile, and I'm wondering if this is some kind of creative job, because lying in bed, just like Brian Wilson did. Well, I'm lying in bed just like Brian Wilson did. Oh. And if you wanna find me, I'm in the sandbox, just wondering where the hell the love is gone. Playing my guitar and building castles in the sun. Whoa, whoa, whoa. And singing fun, fun, fun. Lying in bed just like Brian Wilson did. Well, I'm lying in bed just like Brian Wilson did. Whoa. I had a dream that I was 300 pounds, and though I was very heavy, I floated till I couldn't see the ground. I floated till I could not see the ground. Oh, somebody help me, I couldn't see the ground. Somebody help me, couldn't see the ground. Somebody help me. 'Cause I'm lying in bed just like Brian Wilson did. Well, I'm lying in bed just like Brian Wilson did. Just downtown night, 9:30 on a Tuesday night, just to check out the late night record shop. Midnight record shop. Call it imposing, call it composing, call it insane. Oh, when I'm surrounded, I just can't stop.
I am absolutely delighted to welcome my first guest to the programme. That is Bruce Fyfe, who is chairman of the board of directors for the Homeless Emergency Project in Florida, United States of America. Good afternoon, Bruce.
Good afternoon, Pippa. How are you?
I'm not bad at all, and it's a pleasure to have you on air today. You're very, very welcome. Do please start, Bruce, by telling us what the Homeless Emergency Project is.
HEP is a program designed to assist and aid the entire population, really, of homeless individuals, men, women, children, and veterans, and to attain self-sufficiency, deal with the issues that have led to their homelessness, and enable them to become credible citizens and live the kind of lives that they're entitled to live.
The whole subject is huge and fascinating, and I'd love to delve into all aspects of it. But we have brought you on today to tell us about the plight actually of the veterans. These are ex-service men and women who are come back from combat and find themselves basically disenfranchised from society. Tell us the background to a lot of the ex-service people that you're helping there.
Well, unfortunately, the service people from the current wars, the United States has been at constant combat now for 11 years. These young men and women are coming back, 20% at least, perhaps as many as 30% of them are coming back with severe post-traumatic stress and brain-related injuries, evidenced usually by a succession of activity. They come home, they're angry, they become disaffected from friends and family, tend to turn to self-medication, alcohol, drugs, which then leads to police issues, ultimately leads to homelessness.
All right. Bruce, let me ask you, what is the US government failing in terms of the fact that these people are, in many cases, becoming homeless and turning to self-medication and having to deal with their feelings of anger? Do you feel that they're being let down?
I feel that we could do more. I mean, the federal government is trying to do a great deal. The problem is severalfold. First of all, if a veteran presents himself to the VA for treatment, they believe, and it is true, that they are labeled. They end up with a diagnosis of essentially a mental illness, which impedes their ability to get jobs and succeed in society. And so there is a reluctance for these young men and women to seek help when they should seek it.
I suppose there's a pride issue as well.
It is definitely a pride issue. And then once they seek help, the sheer volume of individuals who need it have created an enormous backlog at the Veterans Administration. We just opened up a 32 apartment complex for returning Iraq and Afghan vets. More than half of these people who have already hit bottom and have been home for several years, more than half of these people are still waiting for approval of benefits from the Veterans Administration. And as a consequence, they are not only in trouble, but they have very little or no resources on which to survive.
So they literally have nothing. They're homeless when they have nothing.
Literally, that's correct.
Then it's quite generous of you to say that the US government is trying to do their best to deal with this situation. Surely the responsibility of the people who fought for that country, the responsibility is on the US government to ensure that these people are taken care of at their time of vulnerability.
It is, and that's an entire conversation that you and I could have. The history of this country, however, is that we have not done a particularly good job. At the end of the Vietnam War, the country was tired of it. They didn't want to deal with it. And we lost an entire generation of people like these young men and women because there were never any substantive benefits or programs available to them. My shelter's been here 40 years. Gosh. 6 years ago, we had 100 veterans living here. We received no support from the federal government. Today, we're at least receiving some support. They're not providing support to all 120 veterans now that we have living here, but they are providing some. So there is an evolution of responsibility that is being developed. Is it enough? No. Is it quick enough? No. Do we have 22 veterans committing suicide every day?
Say that again. I do apologize. Give this.
We have 22 veterans in the United States committing suicide every day.
22?
Yes, that's a Veterans Administration figure.
22 vets committing suicide every day. So these are people who've fought for their country, seen combat, come back, are having to deal with the consequences, are not being supported, and they resort to suicide. If I may ask you, Bruce, contrast that figure, if you can, with the amount of US servicemen and women who die in combat. Can you give me a figure for?
Yeah, I just saw a statistic that indicated there were 40 suicides for every combat death. Now, it is complicated because suicides span generations. But to put it in context, for the general population of the United States, 18 to 30, the suicide rate is twice as high for veterans in that age group as for non-veterans. And so it is a significant and serious problem. It also does not include accidental deaths of drug overdoses. My own son was a three-tour combat Marine, served in Iraq during the worst of that conflict, came home with severe post-traumatic stress, and died of a drug overdose at the age of 24.
Good God, that's terrible.
He's not included in any statistic.
What have you? Can you pinpoint any differences of how the government responds, whether it happens to be a Democrat government or a Republican government?
I have not. I believe actually it was under the Bush administration where the Veterans Administration began a significant push in resources towards this problem. And under President Obama, he has increased the dollars available and the staffing available. But neither administration has done enough. Neither administration has dedicated sufficient resources. And the sheer number of young men and women who have served multiple tours as a result of these years of conflict have really, I believe, overwhelmed the VA in its ability to deal with the issue.
So the VA being the essentially the healthcare system for the veterans, how do you bring to attention an individual? Let's say, for example, you become aware of an individual who's living rough, who's an ex-serviceman who needs help. Do you case study that particular individual and approach the Veterans Administration to see if he qualifies at this point for help? How does it work?
Absolutely. Everyone who comes in here has a full case management plan completed within 3 days. If they're a veteran, we contact the Veterans Administration. We have representatives who are on site on our campus full time. We actually have 5 mental health and addiction specialists paid for by the VA under a special grant who are on our campus. And so we can bring immediate help to these people. The problem is we can't get them, long-term support because it takes months and months and sometimes years for an individual to qualify for disability benefits that will enable them to have the time to get their lives back together. Because it is, in essence, Pippa, an issue of time. You don't solve these problems in a 2-week stay in a mental facility, a hospital. You solve these problems over a period of months and even years of drug and alcohol therapy and mental health therapy.
And as you said, Bruce, for your son, the time ran out, didn't it?
Yes. Yes. For my son, who was in that VA system, the time did run out. That's correct.
There's a Fox News presenter called Bill O'Reilly. I don't know if you're aware of his comments, but he was fairly dismissive about the plight of homeless veterans. Did you come across that? Yes,
and I'm disappointed. I think that he's misinformed. A homeless veteran population is extensive. A 2011 survey was an overnight survey nationally, counted 68,000 homeless veterans. I think that's woefully wrong because veterans stay with other veterans, they stay with friends, they use up relationships. I'm confident that that number is much higher than that number. But even if we were to accept that, 67,000, the federal government has stated goal of ending veteran homelessness by 2015. They made virtually no progress in the last several years. I think that, if anything, the number will be higher in 2015 than it is today. And Mr. O'Reilly is sadly misinformed. And terribly damaging that somebody who reaches that many people should make comments like that to a nation of people who sometimes will just believe what the media tell them. Well, we have plenty of misinformation on both the left and the right. I'm not a big fan of media in general. No offense to you, Pippa. Of course, present company excluded, of course. Absolutely. And tell me something. The amount of suicides that
are highlighted by an organisation like yours, for example. Can you use this information at least to try and campaign? You're doing wonderful work with the individuals and hopefully improving the lives of many of these individuals. But the statistics that you have there, can you use this to campaign to lobby the government?
Well, there are a number of organizations nationally that are doing that. We are really on the ground actually affecting change. I mean, the most important number for us is that 80% of the individuals that come into our program and stay leave into permanent housing. We have one of the highest success rates in the country. And when the message that we're trying to get out is that it takes time and resources and dedicated personnel in order to really solve the problem. You see, Pippa, homelessness is not a problem. Homelessness is a symptom. If solving the homeless problem meant just building apartments, we would have solved it a long time ago. You have to get to the underlying causes, whether it's post-traumatic stress or a brain disorder or a mental health issue. It almost always leads to addiction and other issues. These are the things that we need to address. The mental health system in this country is virtually non-existent.
Some years ago, I mean, it must be what, 6 years ago, the National Institute of Mental Health announced that the Army had entered into an agreement to conduct a $50 million study into suicide and suicidal behaviour amongst soldiers. I'm sure you were aware of that. Was that a useful study? Was it carried out?
One would have to look at the results and say, no, it was not a useful study. In-service suicides are reaching an all-time high. Active duty suicides, I believe there were over 350 active duty suicides last year. That's just unacceptable. There is no reason why young men and women in uniform should feel so despondent and unable to get help that they would actually take their own lives. Once they get out into civilian society and fall into the problems that we deal with, then obviously that suicide rate goes much higher. I will tell you, Pip, in all the years that we have been here, we have never had one of our residents commit suicide.
Well, that's heartwarming. At least you're clearly doing something positive and something that's bringing some kind of care and security to these people. Let me ask you, Bruce, as a final point, what would you, in an ideal world, what would you like to see change?
I'd like to see a couple of things change. First of all, I'd like to see the standards for getting into the military be a little bit more severe.
Great point. What a great point, yeah.
So that we could take a look at the psychological profiles of individuals coming in and make a better determination that they may be at higher risk of running into these problems. Secondly, at the point of discharge, I think the military needs to do a much better job of identifying men and women who are in trouble, because they are in trouble when they're discharged, Pippa. This isn't something that happens when they take their uniform off. And if they could identify them then and begin to work with them. And then finally, we as a society must not stigmatize individuals who are struggling with mental health issues. Because that stigmatization stops these people from seeking help and just aggravates their situation to the point where many of them, unfortunately, do die of a drug overdose or they die by their own hand. And
for those of us in our societies who, there but for the grace of God go I, have never had to witness the kind of things these poor young people have to witness and have to live with day in, day out. It's a tragic, tragic story. Bruce, I can only say thank you so much. Bruce is the chairman of the board of directors for the Homeless Emergency Project in Florida. Bruce, please do come on again. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you, Pippa. And if anybody wants to learn about what we do, ethep.org on the internet.
Say that one more time.
It's ethep.org on the internet.
Wonderful. I'll put it up on Facebook as well. Bruce Fyfe, chairman of the board of directors for the Homeless Emergency Project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This is iTalk FM.
Did you know that Liberty Seguros do pet insurance now?
What?
Wow.
Yeah, I've just taken out my pet insurance with them. My Barclay is now covered against accidents and illness, and I can choose my own vet.
Great. I need some cover too for my cat. And the name of a good vet.
Well, you can choose one of their specialists too. And what's more, right now they'll give you a €25 shopping voucher to use at El Corte Inglés.
Choose the best cover for your best friend from 3 types of pet insurance available. Fetch a quote now from your nearest broker. Call 902 255 258 or visit libertyexpatriates.es. Liberty Seguros, the expat's #1 choice. Conditions apply.
Visit Gibraltar and experience a warm and friendly welcome. Take advantage of our duty-free shopping, including jewellery, perfumery, electrical goods, and shop at all the well-known high street stores. Rest your weary feet at one of our marinas for a leisurely lunch in one